In a packed London courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Every eye was locked on the man standing before the bench, a man once praised as one of Britain's most brilliant bankers. Now, his perfectly tailored suit could not hide the fear in his eyes, nor the truth about the $27 million credit card fraud that shattered lives across the United Kingdom. The case had shocked the financial world. This wasn't just a theft, it was a betrayal of trust at the highest level. A man who once helped others build wealth had secretly built his own empire of deception. And today, Judge Fleischer was about to decide his fate. For months, investigators had followed the digital footprints. Encrypted transactions, offshore accounts, luxury cars, hidden properties, private jets, all linked to a quiet, methodical banker who everyone thought was too professional to be corrupt. But as the Crown Prosecution Service dug deeper, one shocking detail emerged. He didn't act alone. Music intensifies, builds suspense. It began with a small oversight. A missing £8,000 on a corporate client's account. Then, a second transaction, £32,000 vanished overnight. By the time auditors realized the pattern, it was already too late. Over £21 million had been siphoned into fake shell companies, and by the time the dust settled, the losses exceeded $27 million. Judge Fleischer, known across the UK for his uncompromising sense of justice, watched silently as the defense attorney pleaded for leniency. "He's not a criminal, Your Honor," the lawyer argued. "He's a man who made poor choices under pressure." But the judge's expression didn't change. He had heard this too many times before. Fraud, deception, greed, all wearing the face of intelligence and sophistication. Shift to psychological tone, make viewer lean in. Behind every financial scandal, there's always a motive. And this time, it wasn't luxury or fame. It was revenge. According to testimony, the banker had been passed over for promotion by his own firm. After 18 years of service, he felt discarded, invisible. So he did what no one expected. He decided to bleed the system that rejected him, slowly, methodically, and without a trace. The jury deliberated for 2 full days. 26 witnesses testified. 5 forensic accountants broke down the scheme, every forged signature, every hidden card, every manipulated ledger. When the verdict came, no one breathed. The foreman rose, paper trembling in his hand. And with a quiet voice, he spoke the words that changed everything. "Guilty, on all counts." Judge Fleischer leaned forward. But before he could speak, the banker suddenly turned toward the gallery, and what he said next would leave the courtroom in stunned silence. The sound of the verdict still echoed in the hall. Guilty on all counts. But what came next, no one in that courtroom was prepared for. The banker, his once calm composure shattered, slowly turned to face the spectators. His voice trembled, not with fear, but with years of suppressed rage. "You think I'm the only one?" he said. "Look around you, the system made me. The same banks you trust, they've been doing this for decades." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Judge Fleischer's brow tightened. The guards instinctively stepped forward, but the judge raised his hand, ordering silence. "Continue," Judge Fleischer said firmly. The banker's words spilled like poison. He spoke of secret bonuses, offshore transactions buried under consulting fees, and deals made in backrooms that never saw daylight. He described how easy it was to move millions through digital loopholes that the regulators themselves didn't understand. He spoke of colleagues who knew but stayed silent, of how greed had become the new religion of the financial world. And then, he said something that froze even the journalists in their seats. "I never stole that money for myself," he whispered. "I gave it to families the bank destroyed. The ones who lost everything when we foreclosed their homes. The ones your laws never protected." A murmur filled the courtroom. Was it a confession or a justification? No one knew. Even Judge Fleischer leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. Judge's reaction, cold, piercing voice. "Mr. Halbridge," he said, his tone like sharpened steel. "You admit to orchestrating a fraud exceeding $27 million. You falsified documents, exploited the system, and betrayed every person who trusted you. And now, You wish to stand here and call it justice? The banker's eyes glistened with tears. Justice, he repeated quietly. Something your system never gave anyone. For the first time, Judge Fleischer removed his glasses. The courtroom fell completely silent. Even the ticking clock above the bench seemed to stop. Then came the judge's words, calm, yet thunderous. You speak of justice, but justice does not wear the mask of deceit. You claim to have helped the poor, yet you robbed them of faith in the law. You wanted to punish greed, but you became its reflection. The banker's knees buckled. Tears streamed down his face. He whispered softly, "Then sentence me, Your Honor. Do what you must. But remember, I'm not the only guilty one in this room." Judge pauses, audience silent. Judge Fleischer stared at him for a long moment. And then, in a voice that carried both anger and sorrow, he replied, "I don't forget, Mr. Halbridge. But this courtroom is where accountability begins." The judge signaled to the bailiff. The banker was led back to his seat, head bowed, hands trembling. His confession had changed everything, but the sentence had not yet been delivered. As the cameras flashed and murmurs filled the courtroom, everyone waited for the judge's final words. The sentence was about to be pronounced, and it would shake not just one man, but the entire financial system of the United Kingdom. The judge picked up the sentencing papers. But before he spoke, a lawyer from the prosecution interrupted with a shocking revelation, one that could either save the banker or bury him forever. The sound of shuffling papers echoed through the hall as Judge Fleischer prepared to deliver his sentence. The cameras zoomed in. The banker's wife sat motionless in the second row, hands clasped, tears streaming silently. But just as the judge was about to speak, the lead prosecutor rose from her seat. "Your Honor," she said, voice trembling. "The Crown has just received new information, documents retrieved from a Swiss account linked to one of the bank's senior directors." Gasps filled the courtroom. Even Judge Fleischer froze. The prosecutor continued. "These records suggest that Mr. Halbridge may not have been acting alone, and that part of the missing $27 million was redirected to corporate accounts belonging to high-level executives." For a moment, the courtroom was chaos. Whispers, camera flashes, and murmurs filled the air. Judge Fleischer struck his gavel sharply. "Order! This court will have order!" The room went silent again. The judge leaned forward, eyes fixed on the prosecutor. "Are you implying the defendant was part of a larger conspiracy?" "Yes, Your Honor. Evidence suggests multiple parties were involved. The defendant's role may not have been as central as initially believed." The judge's gaze shifted to Mr. Halbridge. The man who once stood tall now sat hollow, broken, but somehow relieved. He whispered faintly, "Now you see." For a few seconds, the entire world seemed to pause. Judge Fleischer had seen countless criminals in his courtroom, but rarely had he faced a man who confessed, not to deny guilt, but to expose corruption. Still, law was law, and justice could not be bought or bent, not under his bench. Judge Fleischer stood slowly, his voice steady yet filled with gravity. "Mr. Halbridge, this court recognizes your cooperation and the new evidence brought forward. But your actions, deliberate, deceptive, and destructive, caused real harm. You played God with the finances of thousands. You forged trust into a weapon. And for that, the law demands accountability." He paused. The banker looked up, trembling. Even the reporters held their breath. "Therefore," Judge Fleischer continued, "for your role in orchestrating a $27 million fraud, this court sentences you to 9 years in federal prison, with eligibility for review pending further investigation into your associates." The sound of the gavel struck like thunder. The banker closed his eyes as tears streamed down his face. He didn't fight. He didn't speak. As guards escorted him away, he glanced once more at Judge Fleischer, and for the first time in years, he looked at peace. Outside the courthouse, reporters flooded the steps. The story broke across every major network. Judge Fleischer sentences banker in $27 million fraud. Investigation expands into banking elite. The world had just witnessed more than a verdict. It had witnessed a mirror held up to power. In a system where money often silences truth, one courtroom reminded the world that justice still has a voice. And under Judge Fleischer's gavel, that voice was thunder. Outro line, deep cinematic fade. This wasn't just the end of a trial. It was the beginning of a reckoning.